My 30M mother 57F escalates insults towards me and my wife 29F. I don't want to cut her off completely, but am not sure what to do next to avoid more drama. Throwaway, because many of my friends are aware of my main account, and I want to keep my family issues private. Summary: my mother escalates her insults toward my family, and I have reached my limit. While I do not wish to sever ties completely, I also do not want to continue enduring her negative remarks about us. For background, this is quite lengthy, so feel free to skip to the "Now for the real issue" section. Don't worry, it's long as well. I had a relatively decent childhood. My mother often spoiled me with gifts but also held high expectations, particularly concerning my academic performance. This led me to feel like I was simply a machine for good grades, allowing her to brag to her friends and relatives about my achievements. During my teenage years, I occasionally felt like I wasn't truly living my life. It was around this time that my relationship with my mother deteriorated in various ways. I recall asking her for therapy before I turned 18, but she never arranged it. Each time I brought up any issues, she would cry, saying things like, "What did I do wrong?" Or, "Why can't you just be normal?" Such responses were unhelpful for a 16 or 17-year-old. Throughout college, my grades plummeted, prompting me to lie to her. After my first year, I switched my major from information technology to physics officially because I sought a more ambitious program. But in reality, it was because I failed several exams. This transition took place at the most prestigious university in my country. I am not from the United States, meaning the exams were incredibly challenging. Around my 22nd birthday, I became suicidal due to the immense pressure. Fortunately, I had supportive friends who encouraged me to seek therapy. During this time, I met my wife, who has become my foundation for building stability. I truly believe I wouldn't be in my current position without her, and perhaps not even alive. My mother does not seem to grasp any of this. I have attempted to explain my feelings and rebuild our relationship, but it has proven almost impossible. She either resorts to criticism or cries, claiming, "I didn't realize I was a monster." Even though I never labeled her as such, I merely expressed that I needed help with certain issues. My mother appears to harbor some jealousy towards my wife. She frequently reminds me that she was an excellent student in high school but couldn't attend college due to her family's financial struggles. Her father was an abusive alcoholic, and her mother worked in a school cafeteria. She had the opportunity to attend college in the 1990s. My parents ran a somewhat successful business before the 2008 financial crisis. However, she never pursued it. Furthermore, her husband cheated on her, which she discovered while caring for him after he suffered a heart attack abroad. Meanwhile, my wife completed her master's degree last year at the same most prestigious university in my country, and we have 2 sons aged 6 and 3. She has a loving husband, and we have found a measure of success. Additionally, since I never completed my college degree, I have started a bachelor's program a year and a half ago while working full-time and raising 2 children. I think my mother has come to realize that most of her excuses are just that, excuses, as we exemplify that she could have achieved her dreams if she truly wanted to. 3 years ago, my grandmother passed away from a cancer relapse, and my mother had cared for her for the past 10 to 15 years, which devastated her since they were very close. I have offered to pay for therapy multiple times, but as far as I know, she never sought help. Another characteristic of my mother is her dogmatic nature. She becomes passively aggressive if anyone disagrees with her. She rarely resorts to explicit insults and has never cursed in front of me. However, she will say things like, "You would do that if you cared about your children. I thought you were more ambitious than that." And the classic, "I raised you better than that." If you push back, she will reject your arguments and ultimately begin crying or feign being on the verge of tears. For years, this tactic worked on me, but I learned early on to simply agree with her and move on with my life, even if I didn't intend to pursue whatever I agreed on, because it was easier. There was no point in reasoning with her. I now recognize this as a manipulation strategy, even if she does not use it consciously. Most of the issues stemming from my upbringing with my mother I have put behind me, and they no longer concern me. My wife's mother, in her 50s, though I do not know her exact age, was extremely abusive both emotionally and physically toward my wife, her younger brother, aged 22, and her father, also in his 50s. My wife cut all ties with her mother when she moved in with me. 2 examples of my mother-in-law's absurd control and abuse when my wife moved out. She left her a lengthy letter explaining why she was cutting ties, but her mother sent the police to claim I had kidnapped her. Later, when my wife was hospitalized, her mother used her police contacts to find out about it, arrived there intoxicated, and began cursing and nearly fighting me in front of dozens of patients while my wife hid with a doctor until security removed her. Afterwards, she confronted me in the parking lot, and when the police arrived, she flirted with the officer, which I found absurd but gave my wife the opportunity to leave safely using a back exit from the hospital. I wrote a detailed letter to the local chief of police about this incident, a level higher than I thought she could reach, and we never heard from her again, so I assume it worked, as this was 7 years ago. My wife's brother moved out of their mother's house as soon as he turned 18. Unfortunately, he fell into the wrong crowd and is currently serving a 4-year sentence for possession of drugs with intent to sell. My wife's father was absent during her childhood, but he is redeeming himself now as a grandfather. He is a genuinely good man who was taken advantage of by his ex-wife. And before anyone suggests, he should have reported the abuse to the police, he did. But my mother-in-law is an expert manipulator, and she made it appear as though he was the abuser, which the police accepted. Now for the real issue. While I can overlook my mother's remarks towards me, I cannot tolerate when she insults my wife. As I mentioned earlier, my wife is my support. She is the best thing that ever happened to me, yet due to her traumatic past, she is also somewhat fragile. My mother has repeatedly claimed that my wife will one day abandon me for her mother. When I shared this with my wife, she laughed, stating that it would never happen. My mother has also repeatedly asserted that my wife will become just like my mother-in-law, which, if you know my wife, is the worst insult possible. In response, I have pointed out that my wife's father was an abusive alcoholic, and while my aunt succumbed to such behaviors, my wife did not, which eventually made her stop bringing it up. My mother has often stated, "We never had a criminal in our family," which, while technically accurate, is not a reflection on my wife, and I see no purpose in bringing it up other than to provoke distress in her. We both strongly disapproved of her brother's actions and attempted to help him rehabilitate. He was close to succeeding, but was caught when he began distancing himself from his old friends and secured his first legitimate job. Since my grandmother passed away, things have deteriorated. I believe my mother is experiencing loneliness, but I can excuse only so much. She has begun suggesting, and then outright stating that we do not genuinely care about our children, that we spend all our time drunk or using drugs, and that we lack ambition, among other assertions. This reached a peak last November when she called us a dysfunctional family and went on a tirade about how poor parents we are, which genuinely angered me. The catalyst for her comments was a toy kitchen we bought for our sons, which they were not using and was taking up valuable space in their room. We sold it and replaced it with Lego, which they play with frequently. Before selling the kitchen, we had stored it for a few months to see if they would ask for it, but they never mentioned it until my mother brought it up. I believed it was a reasonable decision. We do not have much space in our apartment, and there is a playground just outside our building that features a similar kitchen. My therapist later agreed with my judgment. I went no contact with my mother for a few weeks, discussed the situation with my therapist, and then had a conversation with my mother where I laid down clear boundaries, stating that I would not tolerate her insults towards us. If she wanted a relationship with her grandchildren, she would need to turn things around. This seemed to work for a few months. We visited her for Christmas, where she, of course, presented another toy kitchen to our children, making a spectacle of its introduction, and stating that if they wished to play with it, they could do so at their grandma's house whenever they wanted. Then, about 2 weeks ago, she visited us and inquired about some frozen soups she had given us, offering to take them back for her chickens if we didn't intend to eat them. I foolishly agreed, as it seemed reasonable. I dislike wasting food, and feeding chickens something we would not consume strikes me as the right choice. She began rambling about us not caring for our children because we had not provided them with her soups. I regularly ask my older son if he wants to eat his grandma's soup, and he has never said yes. When we reheat it, we often find that half of it ends up being thrown away, as no one wants to eat it. When my mother offers her soups, I try to politely refuse, explaining that I don't have room in the refrigerator or do not need excessively large portions. But she either becomes angry with us, insisting that she hand-planted her vegetables, so if we cared about our children, we should give them to them, or gives them to us anyway. To clarify, we have never asked for this, not even once. I enjoy cooking. I recently purchased a Thermomix for our family, allowing us to have varied meals daily, and according to my family, our food tastes much better. My sons also attend a fairly expensive private preschool where they receive full meals, and they always return satisfied, eating only a little in the evening. As my mother began her tirade about us not caring for our children, because we do not force them to eat things they dislike, I cut her off, declaring that I would not tolerate her accusations. Instead of backing off, she doubled down, first claiming that my older son eats the soup whenever he is alone with her, leading me to suspect she uses similar manipulative tactics on him as she did on me, escalating to her reiterating that we are a dysfunctional family. I pushed back again, urging her to leave. This entire conversation occurred right outside my son's room, with the doors open, and I wanted to protect them from hearing their grandmother disrespecting me and my wife. Nevertheless, she doubled down again, insisting that I was causing a scene in front of my own children. It is important to note that she had initiated the argument. All I said was I would not tolerate her calling us names. She started crying when I asserted that I would not allow her to use my children against me and my wife. After she departed, I followed her to her car and firmly stated that I would not tolerate her behavior and that she was manipulative. She continued to belittle us, claiming we were terrible parents and that our apartment resembled a pig pen. My wife had cleaned the entire apartment the day before my mother's visit, and it was spotless. I consistently maintained that I did not want to discuss this right now and that it was time for her to leave. Ultimately, she did leave, and I returned inside, feeling distraught, with my older son incredibly sad while my younger son played as if nothing had occurred. His autism made the situation slightly amusing to me. I briefly spoke with my wife, and she took a walk to gather her composure while I played Xbox with our son to lift his spirits, which worked. My wife returned to find both sons laughing, leading her to smile through her tears. Since that event, I have remained silent with my mother. She reached out several times. Currently, she is abroad for work, yet her messages are all self-centered. Aren't you interested in how I am doing in country name? I'm worried that something might have happened because we are not responding. Is everything all right? Or, I regret not being able to speak with older son right now. She sends similar messages to my wife. Her latest message to me today was, I understood. You managed to humiliate me and take away my last bit of happiness in life. That's all I deserve. When I replied, do you truly believe you did nothing wrong? Her response was, tell me because I don't understand. To me, this feels like a rude awakening. She is fully aware of what she said and that she violated my boundaries, yet she has not apologized or even acknowledged that she overstepped at any point. Frankly, as I reflect on it, I do not believe she has ever genuinely apologized to me in my entire life. I have grown weary of constantly being the one to extend the olive branch in an effort to reconcile. I feel that after all this time, we deserve respect. Yesterday, there was a performance for grandparents at my son's preschool, but since my mother is abroad, she was unable to attend and has requested a recording. She even insinuated that she hopes my father-in-law keeps his word, using a derogatory term that doesn't translate well into English, and attends my son's performance, which feels like an unnecessary jab at my wife's family. My father-in-law has always kept his promises to us. I do not want to share the recording. I am not inclined to communicate with her unless she offers a genuine apology, but she does not seem to recognize that need. She may truly believe she deserves an apology. I also suspect that if I demand an apology, she will offer a superficial one merely to obtain the recording and then revert to her usual behavior within a month or two. At the same time, I am reluctant to sever all ties with her. I have already cut contact with my father a few years ago. He would only call me to launch similar tirades about how terrible I am and how awful my family is. But since he was hardly present in my upbringing, I experienced no regrets about ending that relationship. That's another story. My wife, on the other hand, is only in contact with her father, so cutting off my mother would mean my children would lose 3/4 of their grandparents and have no grandmothers at all. However, my older son absolutely adores my mother. She indulges him with gifts and occasionally takes him out for enjoyable outings, which I appreciate. But if that comes at the cost of hearing how disgraceful we are, I do not believe the emotional toll is worth it. Ultimately, my mother's accusations are unfounded, in both my wife's and my opinion. We do not use drugs, and we drink only occasionally after a long week generally, just a glass in the evening, if that. We spend quality time with our children, whether it's playing on Xbox, my older son loves Minecraft, playing board games, watching movies, telling bedtime stories, or creating drawings together. We have a wall filled with their artwork. There are times we visit the cinema, zoo, or water park. My wife keeps track of interesting events in our city and takes our older son to them. For example, a month ago, they attended a puppet-making workshop that he thoroughly enjoyed. Last year, there was a city-wide treasure hunt event, and we dressed up as pirates. My wife cosplayed Jack Sparrow so convincingly that people were surprised to learn she was a woman once she began speaking, which excited my son for weeks afterward. He still keeps the treasure next to his bed, and we play pirates together. The rules vary each time, but as long as he is happy, I do not mind. I also took him to a night of science experiments, and he enjoyed that as well. These examples underscore that we strive to be the kind of parents who engage in fun activities with our children. I know we should likely be doing more, but with me working full-time, attending college on weekends, and visiting my mother, whose expectations for visitation were almost weekly for a while, there is limited time remaining. Additionally, given our significant mortgage, I purchased and financed my apartment entirely on my own, which I take pride in, and the high cost of preschool tuition, there is not much money left. With our younger son being autistic, life can be exhausting, yet I believe we are doing well. My sons are well-fed, always dressed appropriately, intellectually curious, can talk to us without judgment, and most importantly, they are happy. So the big question is, what should I do next? I welcome all comments and suggestions. Thank you to anyone who read the entire post, and I apologize for its length. I am unsure what to cut without losing context. Story 2. 33M with 43F in Singapore. Is this a relationship dynamics or trauma issue? An NUS political science graduate in 2016, he reached out to X with the aim of sharing his insights on parenting, as he had previously been a relief teacher. She ultimately agreed. The following events transpired within a span of 2 months. He sent over 60 messages via Telegram using the people nearby function to connect with friends. He mentioned that he had only one friend. X met him for exercise and stargazing at the park while discussing parenting. She was a divorcee with 2 children and 10 years older than him. During their initial meetings, he gifted her an army shirt, shared his credentials from working at a sleep clinic, and told her that a Vietnamese friend who could read fortunes indicated he would have 2 children, although they would not be his, along with many other children. When they went out for drinks, she noticed that his wallet was extremely torn. He invited her on a cruise for a massage and to swim in the future, but she remained silent about it. He also asked her to pat his head, and when she did, he broke down in tears. Recognizing his emotional suppression, she encouraged him to let it out. At that moment, he held back his tears. He requested her hand at the basketball court by extending his palm, but she was uncertain of his intent and feigned ignorance. He left shortly after, stating he was going to meet a friend. He sought her out at her workplace during lunchtime after finishing his reservist duties, revealing that he felt overwhelmed in crowded settings unless accompanied by someone. He wanted to wait for her until her shift ended, but she instructed him to go home after 4 hours. Days before their planned outing, he texted her to ask if they could hold hands. She reprimanded him, noting that they were not in a relationship. She inquired whether he felt deprived of motherly love, to which he responded negatively. He expressed a desire for his mother to continue holding his hand when he entered secondary school. After not hearing from him for 1 day, X felt uncomfortable, worried that she might have been too harsh. She called his workplace, which was a church, and learned he was on medical leave. She resolved to wait for him at the light rail transit station, hoping to see him before work for 4 hours. As he typically left home for work at 6 a.m., they proceeded with their outing as planned. Since his job probation had been extended, she offered to pay for their meal. They had a massage because he claimed his back was in pain, enjoyed lunch, and she treated him to a facial before concluding the day with dinner. Upon discovering that he used body wash to wash his face, she felt sympathy and signed him up for a facial package under his name. Their differing religious beliefs led him to volunteer at her church and attend discussions there. He left in anger when one of the attendees offended him. He attempted to follow her interest in learning written Chinese, but she made it clear she sought to distance herself, stating she would be busier moving forward. After their date, she expressed feeling as if they were flirting, which did not sit right with her as she was 10 years older. He denied having feelings for her 3 times. During those night exercises and stargazing, they shared personal anecdotes, including her desire for a complete family and his feelings of squandering his degree. She gifted him a bottle of organic kombucha, only to be told to take it home because he couldn't finish it in one sitting, as his mother did not like accepting items from others. She brought it to him to finish the next time. She frequently offered him food, and they saved a fallen fruit bat in the park. One night following exercise, he confessed his feelings verbally, and she accepted his hand. However, on another occasion, he requested to return to being friends, citing it felt too fast. She unexpectedly kissed him after having accepted him. He groped her chest and backside immediately on 2 occasions, which he later suggested she should have stopped him if she was uncomfortable. She agreed to be friends, but he stated he was unwilling to engage over WhatsApp. He asked to visit her new build to order flat, and she consented. He tried to get closer to her, but she reminded him that he was the one who wished to be friends. He moved away, and she hugged him, leading to a natural kiss. Things escalated from there as he initiated intimacy by giving her a neck massage, followed by smoothly undressing her. While he did not penetrate her, he used his fingers while saying, "I want you." She halted him, feeling overwhelmed. He suggested she purchase a yoga mat while he would bring water to clean the floor. Again and again, she was oblivious to his intentions for intimacy, even when he remarked, "I am a man." He tensed and covered his face with his arm when she moved her hands during exercise. They began having several meetups, but each time he denied the nature of the relationship, stating things like, "We are just friends, we shouldn't be intimate, right?" This left her feeling confused, yet they continued to see each other. He shared that he had fond memories of his mother playing with him in the rain, but when she offered to do the same, he declined. He confessed to being a mama's boy. When she requested to see his identification card photo, he obscured his personal details, revealing only his image. He disclosed that his mother often remarked that he was useless, even as she felt pained by his long hours at the sleep clinic. He admitted to sleeping in the toilet and storage room before, and had no issue going hungry for a week. He shared that he would hold his bladder and not use the toilet for an entire day, which also occurred when they were out together. He claimed to have seen ghosts and spirits since childhood, both in reality and in dreams. He even expressed a desire to communicate with them. During the intimate moments, he mentioned he reserved penetration for his future wife, whether that would be her or another woman. When they took pictures together, he refused to send them to her. She allowed him time, as he appeared very reserved and they did not hold hands in public due to his shyness. Once, she surprised him by waiting for him at the light rail transit station, only to find his parents right behind him. He boarded the train, leaving her behind. One day, he declared that he acknowledged her as his girlfriend. She remained silent and smiled in response. He inquired whether she would be comfortable living in a 3-room flat, seemingly planning for their future. To her, it was irrelevant. However, he later suggested that her children could stay in a 4-room build-to-order flat while both of them resided in his future house, which was not feasible since married couples can only own 1 HDB flat. He outlined the pros and cons of their relationship, noting that there were more pros. He felt she contributed more than he did, but she did not mind. Observing that he frequently wore torn T-shirts and oversized jeans given to him by others, she purchased him long pants and a wallet. He shared that his father had dementia and was an alcoholic. His mother was depressed and drank due to the burdens of caring for both her husband and father. he admitted to being addicted to alcohol and pornography, having been pressured by classmates, and mentioned that his friends would often send him pictures of women. During intimacy, he expressed a desire to push her out onto the balcony while they were naked. He even sang and danced to a sad song. His skin down there had been damaged due to a childhood illness. When she prevented him from proceeding during intimate moments, he did not hold her to sleep. Later on, he continually urged her to bring a mattress to his house, pending renovation. He repeatedly attempted to activate the water outlet. Since his father frequently entered his room, she offered him a room in her home. However, his mother forbade him from moving out. He wanted to throw a fit before leaving, but she advised him otherwise. Ultimately, he did not move in, as all his cousins, being the eldest sons, had to care for their parents. He had a younger sister, but she had already moved out. He invited her to his house when his parents were away. Concerned that the neighbors might observe and question him, she chose not to go, wanting to protect his reputation. The same applied when they ran into his colleague on the MRT. She hoped to give him time to disclose the news. Out of curiosity, one day she searched for his Facebook profile. She mentioned it to him, but he did not appear pleased. He instructed her not to wait for him at the light rail station, advising her to prepare nutritious drinks and supplements and to commute to work with him. As for the supplements, he mentioned he felt inferior when she suggested they push each other down using their arms. He seemed weak and lacking nutrients, as he often skipped breakfast and lunch when busy at work. When they went out for meals, she often paid, as he would resort to eating instant noodles for days if he overspent. He sent his parents $800. He set a guideline of spending $4 per meal when dining out together. When he met his friend of 15 years, she noted his friend was his complete opposite. He was outgoing and had highlighted hair. She observed that he constantly appeared sad and berated himself for being useless. Despite earning $3,000, he had $20,000 in savings. She tried to motivate him, but he continued to shake his head. Attempts to assist him in changing his glasses, which were over a decade old, and repairing his jean jacket were also declined. When they went out, he bluntly commented that other women had large breasts, not once but on 2 occasions. She felt disrespected as a woman. He suggested she book a hotel room. She was incredulous and declined. On another occasion, he unzipped his pants on the MRT to show her that he was aroused. He began to voice things like believers could not be with non-believers, that his cousin believed he deserved someone better, and that she was merely lonely. He shared that his church friends would scorn him, so he thought short pain was preferable to long suffering. Additionally, he stated he deserved someone superior. She took a picture with her son holding hands to convey that he should leave in peace, but his close friend of 15 years deemed the action inauthentic. She admitted it, and he came to seek her out again for intimacy. The fluctuating dynamics of their relationship took a toll on her, leading her to scold him with vulgarity once over WhatsApp. He appeared weak, cowardly, and effeminate. He admitted this. He hardened his heart and insisted he wanted a Christian wife, returning the items she had purchased for him. She offered them back to him and subsequently sent him letters, food, and photos in an effort to persuade him that things could be reconciled. He sent her his last message using someone else's account, accompanied by a punk image, accusing her of cowardice for not grasping the truth, claiming she made her son a harasser, and stating that he trusted her less than a stranger. He even mentioned that he now had a Christian girlfriend who cared for him. He had his cousin impersonate a lawyer, warning her not to contact him. When that failed, he had his friend send her screenshots of their conversations, stating he would reveal her letters and accusing her of having a disturbed mind. Ultimately, he intended for his son to file a police report against her for harassment, bewildered as to how she acquired his address. Once he asked whether she was unwell or if her emotions were influenced by premenstrual syndrome, to which she replied no. The last night they were together, he told her she had lost him and that she needed to let him go. He blocked her on Telegram and WhatsApp. Why did she keep attempting to reach out to him? She sought help from her therapist, whom she had consulted in 2019. After recounting the events, he suggested that he suffered significant trauma during his childhood to the point of denying it. She was deeply concerned for him even though he chose to leave her, but she was labeled as obsessive. If she were truly obsessed, she would be banging on his door, crying and begging to meet him. However, she did none of that. All she did was ask her son to deliver letters and a thumb drive containing her recorded voice to make contact with him. He denied all that the therapist had suggested about him. Her cousin, who failed to maintain his hygiene, visited a doctor to treat his condition. Despite the pain, he trembled, but his skin remained intact. She pondered how a child could remain silent if he was experiencing pain in such a sensitive area. Surely, this was a sign of neglect and abuse. To this day, she cannot comprehend why he pursued her when he was fully aware of their differences. Was he manipulating and controlling her before devaluing her because he could not achieve what he desired? Or did he use her as an experiment? Or perhaps, like her, he endured trauma. Was this truly his first relationship at the age of 33? He seemed so experienced. It has been 1.5 years since their breakup. She cried for a year and now suffers from depression and anxiety. As she delves deeper into the situation, she realizes that her clinginess and the frequent crossing of her boundaries stemmed from her neglected and abusive childhood. Is this relationship dynamic trauma related, or is it something else? Story 3. Am I the problem? F/22, he says it's not that I'm not doing enough, I'm just not doing a lot. M/27. In my first relationship, which has lasted a year, my partner wants us to get our own place and inquired about my plans. I have repeatedly informed him that he cannot stay over at my house frequently since it belongs to my mother, even though he often stays overnight to the extent that my mother has noticed and mentioned it. She clearly has reasonable boundaries. I have told him numerous times that he cannot sleep over every night. There have been occasions when I have tried to get him to leave, but he insists, saying things like, "Stop worrying about your mother and take care of your man. I've been working all day." We previously agreed that he could relax at my house for a while before leaving when he was ready. However, when we discussed my mother's boundary, he began to express confusion over why she has a problem with it, claiming that she previously told him he could stay whenever he wanted and was very welcoming, which is true, but that does not imply permission for him to essentially live here. He then stated that it is not as if he causes any issues. He is a good boyfriend and looks after me. He even asked if my mother wishes for me to be with a bad boyfriend. This made me think that he feels entitled to stay overnight whenever he likes simply because he considers himself a good partner. Now he wants our own space and asked me how it would be if we moved in together. I told him I will be in school as I have consistently mentioned my intention to start. He then asked if I would also be working, to which I replied that I would indeed work after school. Now, he seems annoyed because he claims I am being vague and wants to know the exact responsibilities I would handle once we start living together. He expressed concern that if, for instance, our mortgage increased while he was solely covering it without my awareness, it would be unattractive. He insists that I should conduct research and provide him with information about houses and apartments. I explain that I think about the basics of our future, but he insists that he wants our conversation to flow naturally. Additionally, I have not considered searching for residences or neighborhoods since I am currently focused on finding scholarships, which is more pressing. We cannot even secure a place right now, so I did not think this was the appropriate time for that kind of research. However, he insists that I have sufficient time to contemplate potential scenarios that might arise when we live together. Does he want me to create scenarios that haven't occurred? I reminded him that I would be in school, but he kept pressing me about how I would manage the house, etc. He became frustrated because my responses did not flow as he preferred, implying that I do not consider our future. It appears he was trying to indicate that if I was not prepared, I would only hinder his progress and he might need to make his moves, which could involve moving further away where I could visit, but that is not what he desires. If I did move in with him, he would not choose a location far from where we currently are. I feel like he just wants to hear how I would sacrifice to make him content. I have assured him numerous times that I will be in school and working, yet he seeks detailed scenarios and expects me to perform research for him. We have had this conversation numerous times, yet it feels as though he needs constant reassurance. He further claims that I am comfortable discussing topics like spending his money, but not about our future. He stated that I am not doing anything to contribute to the relationship's future by doing research and gathering information about where we might live. He then pointed out that I appeared comfortable with him spending his money because I asked him to buy vegetables from the grocery store. The context is that I discovered from my doctor that my iron levels are drastically low, prompting me to research dietary options. Earlier, he was eagerly expressing his desire to come over and was quite flirty, but his attitude shifted dramatically when I suggested we both go grocery shopping together for my needs, including a pan for pasta I wanted to prepare for him. Initially, he remarked, "Oh, it seems like you're going to spend a significant amount of money today." I noticed he seemed reluctant to pay. Usually, during our grocery store trips to buy items for both of us, he pays without question. When I asked if he would be covering the cost, I also inquired if he was all right with that since I was confused by his sudden change in demeanor. He responded that he was okay with it, but then continued insisting it would be too late to go once he finished washing clothes, a task he claimed would take him about 2 hours. I told him I would wait for him, but he kept bringing it up, questioning what I intended to do that day. Ultimately, he implied that it was my grocery run since he would not eat anything I planned to buy, framing it as a personal errand. It was evident he did not want to participate, prompting me to decide to go on my own to buy my food. The change in his attitude confused me, especially since he often claims he is the provider and dislikes it when I buy things. He frequently reminds me that we are a team and I should look after him and go out of my way for him when he feels unwell. Recently, I bought him various ginger products such as teas and drinks to alleviate a stomach ache. He mentioned previously that since I had purchased cleaning supplies, I should be fine buying groceries if I managed my money well. Yet I remember when he was at the store, he was able to buy himself things and asked if he could come over that evening. When I said no, he commented, "Oh, I don't need to buy you anything since I'm not staying over." He even leveraged the time he bought me ice cream as evidence of his generosity. I feel uncomfortable asking him to purchase items specifically for me after I conveyed my discomfort with him spending his money. I tend to avoid making requests of him like paying for my gas or food while out. I have occasionally covered the cost of both our meals. I do not solicit money from him. He previously questioned why I do not ask him to contribute to the cost of my hair appointments, which can run about $300. I told him I would prefer to pay for it unless he genuinely wanted to help. This is not the first time he has raised that question. Though I offered, he responded by saying that I was asking for too much while not giving him sufficient reasons to do so. When I do ask for assistance, he often tells me that he dislikes it when I spend my money and advises me to stop. This inconsistency can be confusing, especially when he acts as though he should cover everything. He asked if I was okay with paying for my groceries, and I confirmed that I was. Then he suggested that I was comfortable spending his money, referencing a situation where I expected him to drive to me since we were at 2 different locations. While this is typical for us, he asserts I am only comfortable spending my own money when it serves my interests, which I find ironic given his behavior. I explained that it is inaccurate to claim I am comfortable with him spending his money. I hardly ask him for anything and strive to avoid making requests. I expressed that if he wished to get me something, I would prefer him to either offer or take the initiative. He retorted that my feelings do not matter and that I must remain silent and improve. He continues to assert that I am comfortable with him spending money, regardless of my actions that suggest otherwise, treating my perspective as invalid. He pointed out that one instance where I attempted to ask him if he would buy my groceries proves I am at ease with his expenditures. He even went so far as to reference murder as an analogy, stating that because someone commits a single crime, it does not define them. He reiterated that despite that one occurrence, it indicates that I am comfortable with his financial contributions. The conversation then shifted back to our living arrangements, where he reiterated that I seem unprepared regarding our future since I lack relevant information to facilitate our transition to living together. He insists that I need to work on this and document ways to improve for him, while maintaining that he is not suggesting I am insufficient, only that I am not doing enough. He also called me perfect. He expressed irritation due to our recurring discussions on this subject, which I can understand since I often feel as though I am reiterating the same points to provide him with confirmation that I am not the type of person who would expect him to handle everything. He believes that since we have discussed this for an extended period, I should be capable of discussing our plans for a place smoothly. He likened it to recounting the day we met and expressed that if I were to ask what day it was and he could not remember, it would imply a lack of care on his part. He feels that I am unwilling to engage in this dialogue. Ironically, he previously demonstrated his own lack of engagement when I was discussing Christmas and our desire to exchange gifts. He persistently insisted he did not understand how Christmas functioned, despite my explanations. His dismissive comments about buying presents made it challenging for me to choose thoughtful gifts. When Christmas arrived, I had bought him the pants I had mentioned previously, but one pair arrived late, which led to him questioning whether I had purchased anything at all or if I was being deceptive, asserting that no one ever does anything for him. I informed him about the estimated delivery date, but he did not believe me, expressing skepticism whenever I said it should arrive. Ultimately, he did not procure anything for Christmas, including the pants I had been planning to purchase. He claimed he was uncertain how to navigate the website, but had no trouble purchasing car parts or arranging next-day deliveries. I refrained from bringing it up again. I presented him with the gifts, which have remained untouched in the same spot for months. In the end, I bought the pants I wanted for myself without making a fuss. I genuinely hardly ask him for anything, and when he does buy me something, it is typically during outings, where he considers them examples of his generosity. Am I constantly compelled to validate my worth with hypothetical plans? Does he simply enjoy hearing about how I would adjust my plans for him?